Choose from a variety of voices to help you create a story worth sharing. Leonard Stiles sat at the corner booth of his restaurant, staring at the "For Sale" sign leaning against the window. The once thriving establishment, Savory Haven, had been his pride and joy for over a decade. Nestled in the heart of the city, it had been a hub for lively conversations, exquisite cuisine, and memorable evenings. But the tides of fortune had turned. Rising competition, poor management decisions, and an economic downturn had turned it into a ghost of its former self. Empty chairs and echoing silence now replaced the bustling energy Leonard had once known. It wasn't for lack of trying. Leonard, a self-made millionaire, had poured his heart, resources, and energy into reviving the place. Yet it seemed every effort was in vain. The failure of the restaurant had left a bitter taste in his mouth, a sour note in his otherwise successful life. As he locked up for the day, his eyes caught movement on the sidewalk. A man, wrapped in tattered layers, shuffled by with a little girl clutching his hand. The child couldn't have been more than 8, her small face streaked with dirt, yet illuminated by an innocence Leonard couldn't ignore. They stopped in front of the restaurant, peering through the glass with longing eyes. Leonard felt a pang of something he hadn't experienced in years: compassion. He opened the door and called out, "Hey, you two hungry?" The man turned, startled, then nodded hesitantly. Leonard gestured for them to come inside. They introduced themselves as Jacob and his daughter, Lily. It turned out they had been living on the streets for months, with nowhere to go. Leonard, on an impulse he couldn't quite explain, offered them the space. "Stay here at least until I sell the place," he said. No strings attached. Jacob's eyes welled up with gratitude, and Lily's smile was a beacon in the dimly lit restaurant. Leonard felt a small sense of relief, perhaps a flicker of purpose, watching them settle in. Little did he know, this act of generosity would set the stage for an extraordinary transformation, one that would turn his world upside down. That night, Leonard couldn't sleep. His mind churned with conflicting thoughts. Why had he let them stay? The restaurant was barely a shadow of its former glory, and adding a beggar and his child to the mix seemed reckless. Still, there was something in Jacob's tired eyes, a quiet dignity that intrigued him. As for Lily, her cheerful demeanor despite their circumstances tugged at his heartstrings. "Maybe I'm just trying to make up for my own failures," Leonard muttered to himself as he stared at the ceiling. The next morning, Leonard arrived early to check on his impromptu guests. He hesitated at the door, hand poised to knock, but curiosity got the better of him. Pushing the door open quietly, he stepped inside. What he saw made him freeze in his tracks. Jacob was on his hands and knees, scrubbing the floor. Lily sat nearby, wiping down chairs with surprising enthusiasm for a child. The restaurant was already looking cleaner than it had in weeks. Leonard had no idea where Jacob had found the cleaning supplies, but it was clear he wasn't wasting his time. "Good morning," Lily chirped, her bright smile lighting up the room. Jacob looked up, startled, and scrambled to his feet. "I hope you don't mind," he said quickly, gesturing at the spotless floor. "We wanted to make ourselves useful." Leonard blinked, taken aback. "You cleaned the place?" Jacob nodded, his expression earnest. "It's the least we could do. You gave us a roof when no one else would. I wanted to show you that we're not here to take advantage of your kindness." For a moment, Leonard didn't know what to say. He had expected gratitude, maybe even complacency, but not this level of effort. His initial skepticism softened. There was something different about Jacob, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. As the day went on, Leonard found himself watching Jacob and Lily more closely. There was an unspoken bond between them, a partnership born of struggle and love. He couldn't help but wonder, who was this man? And what was he truly capable of? Leonard leaned against the counter of the empty bar, swirling the last sip of whiskey in his glass. The restaurant's dim lighting mirrored his mood. Success had once been his trademark, but now it felt like a distant memory. Born to a working-class family, Leonard had built his fortune through a mix of shrewd investments and relentless ambition. The restaurant had been his attempt to create something meaningful, a legacy that went beyond stocks and shares. For years, Savory Haven had been a testament to his vision, an upscale eatery where the city's elite mingled over fine wine and gourmet meals. But wealth, Leonard had learned, didn't guarantee happiness, nor did it shield him from the sting of failure. Watching his dream crumble had been humbling, even humiliating. Despite his resources, he couldn't stop the downward spiral. And as the losses piled up, so did the self-doubt. Still, letting Jacob and Lily stay had been an impulsive decision, born out of a strange cocktail of emotions: guilt, curiosity, and an unspoken desire to do something good. Leonard couldn't ignore the parallels between his failing restaurant and Jacob's dire circumstances. Both were struggling to survive, both clinging to hope. Yet there was more to it than that. Leonard had seen countless people begging on the streets, but something about Jacob had struck him as different. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, or the protective way he kept Lily close. There was a quiet strength in him, a sense of purpose that seemed unbroken despite his hardships. As the days passed, Leonard found himself spending more time observing the pair. Jacob worked tirelessly, cleaning every corner of the restaurant, while Lily filled the air with laughter and chatter. Their presence, though unexpected, felt oddly comforting. For the first time in months, Leonard felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps helping them wasn't just an act of charity. Perhaps it was a chance to find meaning again, to turn his failures into something worthwhile. The restaurant wasn't just a place anymore. It had become a crossroads, a meeting point for three lives heading toward an uncertain yet promising future. Jacob had always been a fighter, though life seemed determined to knock him down. Years ago, he'd been a skilled craftsman, running a modest but successful furniture-making business. His workshop was a haven where he crafted beautiful pieces, each infused with his passion and precision. People appreciated his work, and for a time life was good. He was married, happy, and dreaming of a bright future for his family. But fate, cruel and unpredictable, had other plans. A sudden illness took his wife, leaving Jacob to raise Lily alone. Grief turned his world upside down, but he pushed forward, determined to provide for his daughter. For a while he managed. The furniture business kept them afloat, and though the days were hard, Jacob never let Lily see his struggles. Then came the financial crash. Orders dried up, debts mounted, and the landlord sold the building where Jacob's workshop had stood for years. Without a steady income, he and Lily lost their home. The final blow came when a fire destroyed much of his remaining inventory, a freak accident that left Jacob with nothing but the clothes on his back and Lily's tiny hand in his. The streets became their reluctant new home. Jacob did everything he could to protect Lily from the harsh realities of their situation. He took odd jobs where he could find them, but the money was never enough. Nights were spent in shelters or, when those were full, under makeshift tarps in alleyways. Despite everything, Jacob never let despair consume him. His love for Lily kept him going, and he clung to the belief that as long as they were together, they could survive anything. Lily, in turn, became his anchor. Her bright spirit and unwavering trust in him were a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could still exist. When Leonard offered them a temporary haven in the restaurant, it felt like a miracle. For the first time in months, Jacob had a roof over his head and a chance to breathe. More importantly, he had a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time: possibility. And though he didn't say it out loud, Jacob silently vowed to make the most of this opportunity, not just for himself but for Lily. Lily was a bundle of light and warmth in a world that often seemed cold and unforgiving. At just 8 years old, she carried herself with a resilience far beyond her years. Despite the hardships she and Jacob had faced, Lily never let sadness linger for long. Instead, she turned the smallest joys into celebrations and found wonder in places others overlooked. Her optimism wasn't naivety. It was a choice. She had seen her father's quiet tears when he thought she wasn't looking. She had felt the chill of countless nights spent in doorways and heard the murmurs of pity from passers-by. Yet Lily chose to believe in something better. "It's just temporary, Papa," she'd often say, squeezing Jacob's hand. "We'll find our forever place soon." At the restaurant, Lily's energy became a source of life. She drew pictures on napkins, turning the drab tables into makeshift galleries. Her laughter rang out as she spun in circles across the empty floor, her ragged dress flaring like a dancer's gown. Even Leonard, who prided himself on his no-nonsense demeanor, found himself chuckling at her antics. But Lily's role wasn't just about bringing joy. She also had an uncanny ability to connect with people. When Leonard's mood darkened, as it often did, Lily would sit beside him, her big brown eyes full of concern. "Are you sad because the restaurant is sick?" she asked him once, tilting her head. Leonard blinked at her, caught off guard. "Sick? What do you mean?" "Papa says when things are broken, it's like they're sick. But you can fix them, right? Like how he fixed the wobbly chair." Her innocent words stayed with Leonard long after she had skipped off to find Jacob. There was something disarming about Lily's faith in solutions, even for problems as big as his failing restaurant. She made him wonder if he had been too quick to give up. Meanwhile, Lily became Jacob's silent motivator. Whenever doubt crept in, all he had to do was look at her, her bright smile and endless curiosity. She was his reason for everything, the reason he worked so hard, and the reason he still believed in a better future. Unbeknownst to Leonard, Lily's hope and Jacob's quiet determination were about to ignite a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. It was late one evening when Jacob finally gathered the courage to speak. Leonard sat at the bar, nursing a glass of scotch, the restaurant eerily quiet around them. Jacob approached hesitantly, wringing his hands as if searching for the right words. "Mr. Styles," Jacob began, his voice steady but humble, "I have an idea that might help the restaurant." Leonard glanced up, raising an eyebrow. "You have an idea? For the restaurant?" Jacob nodded, taking a deep breath. "Look, I know it's not my place. But I've been watching, listening. This place doesn't need to fail. It just needs a fresh start." Leonard leaned back in his chair, intrigued despite himself. "A fresh start. And you think you can give it that?" Jacob smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth pulling tight. "I used to run a business years ago. I've seen what it takes to keep something alive, and I've seen what can kill it. I've got nothing to lose, Mr. Styles, and everything to gain. If you let me try, I think I can make this place work." Leonard studied Jacob for a moment, weighing his words. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Jacob glanced toward the dining area, where Lily's drawings still adorned the tables. "First, the restaurant needs to connect with the community. It's too upscale for its own good. We need to strip away the pretense and make it a place where people feel welcome. Real people, not just the wealthy." Leonard frowned. "And how do you plan to do that? Lowering the prices won't magically fill these chairs." "It's not just about prices," Jacob countered, his voice gaining strength. "It's about the experience. We make it warm, inviting. Add events to draw people in. Open mic nights, family dinners, even cooking classes. We bring in the heart this place is missing." For a moment Leonard said nothing. He swirled his scotch, his gaze distant. "And you think you're the one to make all this happen?" Jacob straightened. "Give me a week. If nothing changes, I'll step aside. But if we pull this off, maybe we both get a second chance." It was a gamble, Leonard knew. But looking at Jacob's determined face, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity, and maybe even hope. Leonard sat in his office, the faint hum of the restaurant's ancient refrigerator filling the silence. Jacob's words echoed in his mind. "Give me a week," it sounded like desperation. Then again, Leonard had been desperate himself when he'd put the restaurant up for sale. Maybe desperation wasn't such a bad thing. Still, doubt lingered like a stubborn stain. Jacob was a beggar, a man who'd shown up with nothing but the clothes on his back and a child clinging to his hand. How could someone like that have the skills to turn around a failing business? Leonard had spent years pouring money, expertise, and connections into the restaurant, and even he hadn't been able to save it. What could Jacob possibly bring to the table? And yet, Leonard couldn't ignore what he had seen over the past few days. Jacob's work ethic was undeniable. Every surface in the restaurant gleamed thanks to his efforts, and even the broken chairs in storage had been repaired with care. Then there was Lily, whose cheerful presence had made the once dreary space feel a little less suffocating. But was that enough? Leonard drummed his fingers on the desk, weighing his options. He could dismiss Jacob's idea as foolishness and continue waiting for a buyer. Or he could take the risk, an absurd, improbable risk, and let Jacob try. Why am I even considering this? Leonard muttered to himself. His head told him to say no, but something in his gut whispered otherwise. When he finally returned to the dining area, Jacob was waiting, Lily perched beside him with her sketchbook. She looked up and grinned, as if sensing that the decision had already been made. "All right," Leonard said, crossing his arms. "You've got your week. But let me be clear. If this doesn't work, I'm not giving you a second chance." Jacob's face lit up with a mix of relief and determination. "Understood, Mr. Styles. You won't regret this." Leonard wasn't sure if he believed that, but as he watched Lily show her father a new drawing, something colorful and hopeful, he felt a flicker of cautious optimism. The next morning, Jacob arrived at the restaurant with a notebook filled with scribbled ideas. Leonard observed from the bar, half convinced he was about to witness a disaster in slow motion. Jacob, however, was undeterred. With Lily trailing close behind, he got to work. The first step was reimagining the restaurant's identity. Jacob moved through the space, rearranging tables and setting up a community corner where families or groups could sit together at a long, rustic table. He found old chalkboards in the storage room and used them to create menus with handwritten specials. Leonard raised an eyebrow as Jacob pulled together mismatched vases and filled them with wildflowers Lily had picked from a nearby park. The atmosphere, while far from polished, began to feel more inviting. But the challenges came swiftly. Supplies were low, and Leonard was hesitant to invest in more. "We're not sinking another dime into this place until I see results," he told Jacob. Undeterred, Jacob got creative. He used the restaurant's leftover ingredients to whip up simple yet flavorful dishes: homemade soups, hearty pastas, and freshly baked bread. It wasn't the upscale cuisine Savory Haven was known for, but it was comforting, and Jacob believed that was what people needed. The next hurdle came from the staff, or rather what was left of it. A skeleton crew of disillusioned employees showed little faith in Jacob's plan. The head chef, a prickly man named George, outright refused to take orders from him. "What does a guy who's been living on the streets know about running a restaurant?" George scoffed. Jacob didn't argue. Instead, he rolled up his sleeves and worked side by side with the kitchen staff, his calm demeanor gradually winning them over. Leonard, watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but notice the shift. Though small, it was undeniable. Jacob had a way of inspiring people. Still, the first few days were rocky. Jacob's early attempts at drawing customers fell flat. A handwritten flyer taped to the front window went unnoticed, and the few people who wandered in were unimpressed. Leonard began to feel his doubts creeping back. Yet Jacob remained steady, his resolve unshaken. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice firm. "Give it time." Leonard wasn't sure what surprised him more, Jacob's optimism or his own growing desire to see him succeed. By the fourth day, Jacob's plan began to take shape. He enlisted Lily to help create colorful, cheerful flyers that they passed out at a nearby park and local community centers. Instead of touting Savory Haven as an upscale restaurant, the flyers emphasized its new identity: a welcoming place for families, students, and locals looking for simple, delicious meals at reasonable prices. Jacob also tapped into his resourcefulness, reaching out to local vendors for affordable supplies and striking up deals with small farms to source fresh ingredients. "It's not just about saving money," he explained to Leonard one evening. "It's about building connections. If we support them, they'll support us." The restaurant's first event, a pay-what-you-can dinner night, was a gamble. Leonard had his reservations, fearing it would attract people who wouldn't pay at all. But Jacob was adamant. "We're not just feeding people, we're building goodwill." That's priceless. To everyone's surprise, the event brought in a small crowd. Families, students, and even a few curious passers-by filled the once empty tables. Jacob worked tirelessly in the kitchen, whipping up hearty soups and fresh-baked bread. Lily darted around, helping to set tables and chat with customers. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and even Leonard found himself smiling as he watched her brighten the room. The highlight of the evening was when Jacob stepped out of the kitchen and began interacting with the diners. He moved from table to table, listening to their stories, thanking them for coming and asking for feedback. People responded warmly, drawn to his sincerity. By the end of the night, the donation jar on the counter was filled with cash, enough to cover the evening's costs and then some. Encouraged by the small victory, Jacob and Leonard pushed forward with more ideas. Jacob introduced themed nights such as Family Fridays with comfort food and Student Saturdays featuring budget-friendly specials. He also turned a corner of the dining area into a small stage for local musicians, poets, and storytellers to perform. Little by little, the restaurant began to come alive. The once empty chairs were filling up, and the hum of conversation and laughter replaced the silence that had haunted Savory Haven for months. Leonard, who had been skeptical at first, found himself increasingly invested in Jacob's vision. For the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope that his beloved restaurant might still have a future. A week after Jacob's efforts began, Leonard decided to stop by the restaurant unannounced. The sun was setting as he approached the building, his steps slow and uncertain. Part of him expected to find the place as lifeless as it had been before Jacob arrived. After all, a few successful nights didn't guarantee long-term change. But when Leonard pushed the door open, he was greeted by a sight that left him speechless. The restaurant was alive. Every table was occupied, the air filled with the hum of voices and bursts of laughter. The soft strumming of a guitar drifted from the small stage in the corner, where a young musician played to an appreciative audience. The aroma of freshly baked bread and sizzling herbs filled the space, inviting and warm. Even the decor had changed. Lily's colorful drawings had been transformed into a display wall, giving the restaurant a personal and welcoming charm. Jacob stood behind the counter, his sleeves rolled up and a smile on his face as he worked alongside George, the once reluctant chef. The staff bustled around with an energy Leonard hadn't seen in years, their movements confident and purposeful. "Mr. Styles." Lily's cheerful voice cut through the noise. She bounded over to him, her eyes shining. "You came. Isn't it amazing? Papa says tonight might be our best night yet." Leonard could only nod, his gaze sweeping across the room. Customers were laughing, eating, and chatting as though they were at a family gathering. Strangers shared tables, clinking glasses and trading stories. The transformation was undeniable and stunning. He approached the counter, where Jacob noticed him and immediately stepped forward. "Mr. Styles," Jacob said, his voice steady but filled with pride. "Good to see you." Leonard gestured around the room, his disbelief evident. What happened here?" Jacob chuckled softly. "People happened. We gave them a reason to come, and they stayed. The food helps, of course, but it's the connection that makes the difference." For a moment, Leonard couldn't respond. He felt a surge of emotions, pride, awe, and even a hint of shame for ever doubting Jacob. This wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a place of belonging, a second chance not only for the people who dined here but for the man who had once dreamed of making it great. Leonard couldn't shake the feeling of awe as he took a seat at the bar, his usual vantage point to observe the restaurant. But tonight, instead of emptiness and echoes, there was vibrancy, an unmistakable buzz of life that he thought was gone forever. He gestured for Jacob to join him, and Jacob, after ensuring the kitchen was running smoothly, walked over and sat down. "You've done something incredible here," Leonard said, his voice tinged with admiration. "I've been pouring money into this place for years, and yet in 1 week, you've accomplished what I couldn't." "How?" Jacob smiled, though there was a hint of humility in his expression. "It wasn't just me, Mr. Styles. It was everyone. The staff, the people who walked through those doors, Lily. His gaze softened as he mentioned his daughter. All I did was create a space where people felt they belonged. Leonard nodded slowly, his thoughts racing. But where did you learn to do all this? You didn't just stumble into these ideas. You understand people, business. This isn't something you pick up on the streets. Jacob's face grew serious, and he exhaled deeply. Before life took everything from me, I was a craftsman, a furniture maker. I had a small shop, a few employees. We made things that people loved. It wasn't fancy, but it was meaningful. I ran that shop the same way I've tried to approach this restaurant, by building relationships, not just transactions. He paused, glancing at Lily, who was chatting with a group of customers. But when my wife passed, everything unraveled. I made mistakes. I didn't know how to balance grief, parenting, and running a business. Eventually, I lost it all. This is the first time I've felt like I could build something again. Leonard sat back, his heart heavy with the weight of Jacob's story. He had assumed the man was a simple beggar, someone with nothing to offer but gratitude. Yet here he was, a skilled, determined man who had turned failure into resilience and despair into hope. And Lily, Jacob continued, his voice soft, she's my reason for everything. She's the one who keeps me going, even when I want to give up. I guess this restaurant gave me a chance to show her that no matter how bad things get, we can still create something beautiful. Leonard felt a lump form in his throat. For so long, he had focused on his own failures, wallowing in self-pity and frustration. But sitting here, witnessing what Jacob had done, he realized he had been given a gift. Jacob and Lily hadn't just revived the restaurant, they had revived him. Looking around at the packed tables and smiling faces, Leonard made a decision. Jacob, he said firmly, this isn't just my restaurant anymore. It's ours. Jacob's eyes widened, but before he could respond, Leonard raised a hand. You've earned it. You've given this place a soul, something I couldn't do on my own. So what do you say? Partners. For a moment, Jacob was silent, his expression unreadable. Then, with a grateful smile, he extended his hand. I'd be honored. As their hands clasped, a cheer erupted from the dining area, where Lily had overheard the exchange and spread the news. The customers joined in, clapping and laughing, as if celebrating not just a partnership but a new beginning. In that moment, Leonard knew the restaurant had finally found its purpose, not as a monument to his success, but as a symbol of resilience, community, and hope. In the days and weeks that followed, Leonard found himself stepping into a role he had long forgotten, one of a hands-on leader, but this time with a renewed sense of purpose. Gone was the cold detachment that had marked his recent years. Instead, he was fully immersed in the day-to-day workings of the restaurant, guided by Jacob's fresh ideas and grounded wisdom. For Leonard, the transformation was more than professional. His perspective on success, wealth, and happiness had shifted. He had spent so many years chasing accolades and profits, only to find himself empty and disillusioned. Now, he realized that true fulfillment came from connection, from creating something that mattered not just to him but to others. Watching families laugh together at the community table, seeing strangers bond over a shared meal, these moments carried a significance that no financial balance sheet ever could. Jacob, too, experienced growth of his own. Though he had started this journey with cautious hope, the success of their partnership gave him a sense of validation he hadn't felt in years. For so long, he had believed his failures defined him. But here, in the glow of the restaurant's revival, he saw that his struggles had shaped him into someone stronger, someone capable of rebuilding not just a business but a life. Lily, ever the beacon of optimism, thrived in her new surroundings. She became a fixture at the restaurant, greeting customers with her infectious smile and proudly showing off her art, which now adorned the walls as part of the decor. To Leonard, she was a constant reminder of resilience, the ability to find joy even in the darkest moments. One evening, as the three of them sat together after closing time, Leonard raised his glass of wine. To second chances, he said, his voice full of emotion. To building something worth sharing, Jacob added, lifting his water glass. And to making people smile, Lily chirped, holding up her glass of milk. Their toast hung in the air, a testament to the journey they had undertaken together. The restaurant was no longer just a business. It was a home, a place where all three of them had found not only redemption but a new sense of purpose. As the restaurant continued to thrive, the bonds between Leonard, Jacob, and Lily grew stronger. They weren't just business partners. They had become a family of sorts, each filling a void in the other's life. For Leonard, who had no children of his own, Lily was like a granddaughter, her bright spirit a source of joy in his otherwise solitary life. He found himself looking forward to her endless questions and her contagious laughter. Jacob, meanwhile, gained more than just a partner in Leonard. He found a friend and mentor. Despite their differences in background, the two men discovered a mutual respect that deepened with time. Leonard shared his expertise in business strategy, while Jacob taught Leonard the value of seeing the humanity in every decision. Their bond wasn't limited to the trio. The staff, once skeptical of Jacob's leadership, now rallied behind him. George, the prickly head chef, had become one of Jacob's strongest allies, even grudgingly admitting that Jacob's simpler menu had brought the restaurant back to life. "You've got a knack for making things work," George said one night, clapping Jacob on the back. "Don't let it go to your head." But the most unexpected bond of all began to blossom between Jacob and one of the restaurant's servers, a kind-hearted woman named Elena. She had been working at Savory Haven for years, quietly enduring the ups and downs. When Jacob first arrived, she had treated him with the same skepticism as the others. But as she watched him transform the restaurant, her admiration grew. It was during a quiet moment after the chaos of a particularly busy Friday night that Jacob found himself sitting across from Elena, sharing a cup of coffee. They talked about their lives, her dreams of starting her own bakery, his journey from tragedy to resilience. Their conversations became more frequent, their connection deeper. For the first time since losing his wife, Jacob felt the stirrings of something he thought he'd never feel again, the possibility of love. Lily, ever the matchmaker, noticed the growing friendship. "You like Elena, don't you, Papa?" she teased one afternoon, her grin mischievous. Jacob chuckled, ruffling her hair. "What makes you say that?" "Because you smile more when she's around," Lily said matter-of-factly. "You should ask her to bake cookies with us." By the time Leonard caught wind of the budding romance, he couldn't help but laugh. "Looks like you're building more than a restaurant here, Jacob," he teased. "Maybe we should add wedding catering to the menu." Jacob shook his head, embarrassed but undeniably happy. For the first time in years, his life felt full, not just with work, but with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. Months passed, and the restaurant's transformation became a beacon of hope for the community. Once a struggling business on the verge of closure, Savory Haven was now thriving, its tables filled with laughter and camaraderie each night. Word spread far beyond the neighborhood. People came not just for the food, but for the warmth and heart that radiated from the place. Leonard watched it all unfold with pride, but the true joy came from seeing what Savory Haven had become for those who worked there. Jacob had fully stepped into his role as co-owner, his innovative ideas and compassionate leadership guiding the staff to new heights. The once divided team had become a family, each person invested in the restaurant's success. Lily, too, had found her place. Her artwork, which now adorned every corner of the restaurant, became a symbol of its new identity. Customers often asked her about her drawings, and she eagerly explained the stories behind each piece. Leonard even set aside a small section of the restaurant as Lily's Art Corner, where she could sell prints to raise money for her future dreams. Jacob's relationship with Elena blossomed quietly but beautifully. The two of them worked seamlessly together, their shared commitment to the restaurant deepening their bond. One evening, after the last customer had left, Jacob surprised Elena with a bouquet of wildflowers. Lily's idea, of course. As they stood in the glow of the restaurant's dimmed lights, Elena smiled and whispered, "This place isn't just special because of what we do. It's special because of who we are." For Leonard, the restaurant's success marked a turning point in his own life. The millionaire who had once measured his worth in dollars and achievements now found fulfillment in the simple act of giving back. He no longer saw Savory Haven as a reflection of his failures, but as a testament to resilience and the power of human connection. On the one-year anniversary of Savory Haven's rebirth, the team hosted a celebration for the community. The restaurant was filled to capacity, with live music, delicious food, and heartfelt speeches. Leonard took the stage to address the crowd, his voice thick with emotion. "This restaurant isn't just a business," he said. "It's a home. It's proof that second chances are real, that people can come together to create something extraordinary. And none of this would have been possible without Jacob and Lily." The room erupted in applause as Jacob and Lily joined Leonard on stage, their faces beaming with gratitude. For Jacob, it was the culmination of a journey he never thought he'd take. For Lily, it was a glimpse of the bright future she always believed in. As the evening wound down, Leonard stood by the door, watching families, friends, and neighbors leave with smiles on their faces. He turned to Jacob and said, "We did it." Jacob nodded, his eyes shining. "No, we're doing it, this is just the beginning." Together, they locked up the restaurant, its warm glow lingering long after the lights went out. Savory Haven wasn't just a symbol of their shared triumph. It was a promise of the brighter days still to come. Savory Haven was more than a restaurant. It became a testament to the power of resilience, kindness, and the belief that even the smallest acts of generosity can spark profound change. Leonard's journey from disillusioned millionaire to compassionate mentor mirrored the transformation of his restaurant, from a failing business to a thriving community hub. Jacob's story was no less remarkable. Once a man stripped of everything, he found redemption not by taking charity but by rebuilding with dignity and determination. Through his efforts, he showed that past failures don't define a person. What matters is how one rises from the ashes. His daughter, Lily, served as the glue that bound them all together, her unshakable optimism reminding them that hope shines brightest in dark times. Their journey was filled with challenges, doubts, fears, and moments of near defeat. But at every turn they pushed forward, leaning on each other and their shared vision of what the restaurant could become. By opening their hearts and minds to possibility, they created not just a successful business but a space where lives could intertwine, laughter could echo, and dreams could grow. The lessons of Savory Haven go beyond its walls. It teaches us to see potential in the unlikely, to give second chances freely, and to embrace the idea that our actions, no matter how small, can ripple outward to create extraordinary change. Most of all, it reminds us that no matter how bleak the present may seem, the future always holds the promise of new beginnings. The story of Savory Haven is more than just a tale of a restaurant. It's a reminder that resilience, kindness, and creativity can turn even the most impossible situations around. What stood out to you most about Leonard's, Jacob's, and Lily's journey? Was it the quiet determination of a man who had lost everything? The generosity of a millionaire who rediscovered his purpose? Or perhaps the unwavering optimism of a little girl who believed in miracles? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know which part of the story touched your heart the most. If this story inspired you, please share it with your friends and family. Together we can spread messages of hope, resilience, and the beauty of second chances. If you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the power of transformation and human connection. By supporting this content, you're helping us bring even more uplifting tales to life. Let's take a moment to reflect on what Savory Haven represents. A place where generosity meets creativity, and where people come together to overcome life's challenges. Imagine what our world would look like if we all embraced these values in our own lives. What small act of kindness can you offer today that might change someone's life tomorrow? The story of Savory Haven is proof that even when life feels hopeless, a single spark of kindness can ignite a profound transformation. And while Leonard, Jacob, and Lily have found their brighter future, there are countless other stories of resilience and renewal waiting to be told. What's next? Stay tuned for another tale of triumph in the face of adversity. Imagine a struggling single mother who turns a forgotten garden into a sanctuary for her community, or a small-town librarian who discovers an unexpected talent that saves her library from closing forever. Life is full of twists and turns, and sometimes the most beautiful chapters begin with uncertainty. Our next story will show you how one act of courage, creativity, or kindness can ripple out to touch lives in extraordinary ways. Don't miss it. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're the first to hear our next heartwarming tale. And remember, every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change the world. What will your story be?